So at this point, you might say, all right, Jess, I've heard enough. I'm ready to switch to raw, but I'm still afraid of salmonella. My vet tells me I got to be careful about salmonella. So Frontiers of Veterinary Science sent out a survey to about 5,600 people across 62 different countries. And they made the conclusion that raw feeding is safe and pathogen transmission is very rare, except in 3 different instances. So the first instance is that pet parents that were feeding raw were preparing the raw food in separate areas using separate containers and separate utensils from their own personal area and utensils and containers. This is very interesting to me because you would think people would be like, oh, keep it separate. You don't want to have the pathogen transmission. But actually in the survey, they found that the pet parents preparing raw in the same area, using the same utensils and using the same containers as their own personal food area had a less risk of the pathogen transmission. And this is what I do for Jericho. I use the same kitchen counter that I prepare my foods on. I just put down a food grade silicone mat. That way, if something drops, I can still use it because the mat is clean. And I also use the same glass containers. I use the same spoons. I use the same everything, the same jars, the same containers, everything's the same. And Jericho's been eating raw since 2018. And whenever I test his poops, I do a full GI panel. It was back negative for salmonella and all these other bacteria and pathogens. The next thing that they found in this survey that increased pathogen transmission risk between raw to humans is a lack of variety in the proteins. And they found that in the survey, more advanced feeders tend to feed a greater variety of foods and have more effective handling and hygiene routines. So that kind of makes sense because if you're more advanced, you're kind of more experienced and you have more research and knowledge under your belt. So you know how to transition foods. It sounds like if they're feeding a bunch of different proteins. In the survey, it said, I think, around 7 to 12 different proteins, which is great because wild cats eat between 5 to 7 different proteins to complete their diet. So protein variety is great. And here's just another reason why protein variety is great, because you can lessen your risk of pathogen transmission. I personally buy from the local farmers market, and I like to buy from different states and from different people. That way there's variety right there. And Jericho eats quail, chicken, turkey, beef. So that's 4 proteins right there. Give me a polydactyl thumbs up if this is helpful so far, so more cat parents that want to feed their cat better can find this video. Thank you. The next pathogen transmission risk associated with raw is mixing it with dry food. And this is because people think that dry food is just resistant to salmonella. But if you actually take a look at the past 10 years of pet food recalls, dry pet food is responsible for 98% of salmonella recalls. So it isn't impervious to it. It can still happen in kibble. And it happens when mixing raw and dry food, because in the survey, they found that only 58% of pet parents wash their hands after handling dry food. And I'm guilty of it. I used to work as a cat sitter for 3 years before I started my online business. And if a couple pieces dropped, I would just toss it into the bowl and I wouldn't even wash my hands. Maybe I would wipe it on a paper towel. And I've talked about this and have seen comments of people that they would say, wow, I never even thought of that. Additionally, many cat parents that feed dry food don't clean out the bowl every single day. And this is a problem because as the cat eats, some saliva will get onto the dry food, and that moisture is going to create an environment for bacteria and mold to grow. Plus, the longer the food sits out, the more rancid the fatty acids will get. Yes, there are preservatives in dry food, but that doesn't mean that it can be left out forever and ever. That's just to protect it while it's still in the bag. Now, I just talked about how I would get my dry food cat to raw, and I said I would start with freeze-dried raw. Now, the solution here to this pathogen transmission risk is proper hygiene. So clean out the bowl after each meal, and also wash hands after handling the food. Proper litter box maintenance is also a must because salmonella sheds through the feces. And you can check out my 5-minute a week litter cleaning routine right over. Yeah. Thanks so much for watching.